Ooh, baby, that's our
Baby.
sink. God,
Damn.
good grief.
You're nasty. Nasty as hell.
Hey guys, Flawless Crested Geckos here. Will and Audra.
Hi.
Go ahead, baby. Tell me what we're going to do.
So, we have been doing our YouTube channel for a little while now. We've had several weeks under our belt. And we decided that this week's actual video was going to be based off of you guys. We went through our comments of all of our videos and a few different things that we've been asked on other social media platforms, and we have written down a list of the questions that you guys have asked. I do believe we've tried to answer some of those in the comments, but just in case those people didn't see those answers or other people have questions about those actual comments, then we figured we'd go into a little bit more detail actually on a video. So you ready?
Let's go.
All right. Number one. So we've been asked this actually twice, or actually more than that, but twice specifically in comments. Calcium sacs. How to check calcium sacs. So what we're going to do is Will does that. I do not do that. That is not a me thing. So we've got a gecko here that...
This is Peppa.
This is Peppa. She's been up on our site before. She's been with us for a little while. She's a
so
little...
you start walking her
Little Dalmatian.
where we normally walk.
Yeah.
The geckos.
Get her little... You gotta... Yeah. So you're just gonna like let her walk a little bit. Get her energy out. Get her a little... her skittishness out for a minute. Let her do her little thing. Hold it up a little higher.
And you just grab her right there. It's not hurting her. She's not hurting her. She's already ready to get at something. Okay. And you touch her. And there you go. It's literally that simple.
Yep.
Yeah.
She thinks she's a beast.
So it doesn't hurt them at all. It's rather quick, very painless, and easy to do. And you get faster and better at it the more practice.
Yeah, I have no practice. I let him do it. Alright, so basically you will just see those little sacs. If you couldn't see it in the video, they're pretty prominent when they're there.
And when they're full, they'll be, if not touching, almost touching, and that's the way you know you have good, solid calcium sacs.
Alright, number 2. We had a question on how, for beginners, how you understand morph classifications. Which is, that's sort of a difficult question.
Well, for me, the thing about it, you're dealing with a lot of genetics, and we're furthering that process. So you have morphs and then you have the genes. And when you're identifying some of these morphs, you have the harlequin, flame, phantom,
harlequins,
pinstripes, partial
lilies,
pins, lilies,
tigers,
everything. So
charcoals, caps.
right, there's a lot of them. And then when you start overlapping a lot of them, which is what we are doing and a lot of other breeders are doing, your gene stacking and morph stacking, you end up with geckos that are beautiful,
but they're hard to classify.
With multiple classifications is basically what I'm saying. So a lot of people don't even know what they're looking for. They just want to know what the morph is. For us, typically, we're looking for certain geckos, for certain programs, we're looking for specific things. And we don't even look by morph per se, rather than just strictly the genes. Or the expression of such gene. If you're looking at like an extreme, we want something, you know, high pattern, high expression.
You'll hear a lot of people call it drippy.
Right. Well, that's a trait in itself as well.
Drippy.
Dripping off the dorsal. But to get more back into it, is basically what you end up with when you start stacking all these genes is multiple classifications. You'll end up having a harlequin pinstripe Dalmatian. There's a lot of different things. So when we tell people, you know, when they ask us, we love to help. You know, it doesn't mind. We don't mind that, but you know, we're gonna give you what we see. And again, someone else may see something different. And then depending on different stages, we have I've seen it for myself, especially with lily whites. You have a pinstripe lily, and then by the time it's ready to breed, you could never really tell unless you hatched out that gecko that it was a pinstripe, because it's literally engulfed in white. So that's how we tend to do that as far as classifying genes, classifying morphs, I'm sorry.
Just kind of to, glaze over that. I mean, you've got so many different morph classifications, and, to kind of dive into that a little bit is, like, for instance, Dalmatians. Like, we have Peppa, the one that you just saw. She's a little Dalmatian. However, she wouldn't be what we would consider, like an ink spot or a confetti or a super Dow or any of those things. So there are classifications within each morph, and that's where a lot of people's opinions differ.
Right.
So
even with tri-stripes, you have tri-stripes. Some people identify tri-stripes where it is or it isn't. And the guideline where they judge whether it isn't or not is if you have 3 colors and they're all equally expressed on the gecko.
You said tri-stripe.
Tricolor.
He's got ball pythons on the brain. Yeah. I'm like sitting here thinking, what are you talking about?
Yes, I'm sorry. So tricolor.
Tricolor.
Yeah, so if you had the 3 colors on that gecko and all the colors are equally expressed on that gecko, then it would be considered a tri-stripe. Tricolor.
You need to get your words right.
But and then some people just want to see the 3 different colors on a gecko to consider it a tricolor. So it depends on what guides what guideline you're going to go by. Same thing with Dalmatian. You can have a Dalmatian and beautiful Dalmatian, and some people say you have to have more than 100 spots
to make
have
it
a super Dow. So it depends. The guidelines are ever evolving between groups or breeders or keepers.
A lot of it is just names too, that
Right.
This particular breeder has really taken a lot of time, a
Absolutely.
lot of effort.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
You have other people that name different things. You have confetti, where Brian at Altitude
he really took a lot of
that
time
line.
and effort to do that.
But then you also have Mardi Gras. And where I'm sure other breeders, especially dealing with, we have both of the lines, but dealing with one line or the other, would say this line is better than that line. We don't like one more than the other. We just understand that they come from two different
places.
Origins.
Yes. It's like your Xanthics. There are a few different lines that have popped up along the way,
Right.
and it is the same gene. It's just
so far that we know. Yeah.
So far that we know. Yeah. So far that
we've
had
people successfully cross those lines.
But just it's coming from different breeders, like, so it's just morph classification is one of those things that is a really, really deep topic that you could literally talk about for 6+ hours in the day and still not get it all
Word
covered.
of the wise, what we go by: if you like it, get it.
Yeah.
Just,
And if
if you like it, get it.
And if you don't work with it.
Right.
But, yeah. And to just priorities. What's important to you, and a couple of things that should always be important to you, no matter who you are across the board, is health and not breeding anything that has any type of genetic abnormalities. Let's see if I can get that out. I'm wearing these.
She always talks this way.
I do not. So I have these like liners trying to straighten my teeth, and now I can't talk like I should. He's gotten used to it, and I always make fun of him. He says Xanthics because he's got it in his mouth. But yeah, so you should always want to make sure you don't ever breed any type of structural deficiencies or any type of anything that pops up, polytoes, whatnot.
You want to further the breed,
and then you want to make sure you're improving structure and things like that.
Right. So you want to make sure that you can take your vision to the next step.
Exactly.
So which is what we do with our breedings, our parents. We envision something and see what we can do. What are we picking out of our breeders that we can put them together and produce the next legend that we will keep here to produce the following line. And we also look at that when we buy geckos as well. When we acquire geckos, what can we add to what we have to further our line?
Yeah, and that we also had another question here, that how do you pick out your pairings and how do you do your pairings? But that is just sort of kind of along the same lines. We just kind of answer that all in one, because we always just are very specific as to what we want.
Right.
It really doesn't have anything to do with anything else but our preference. When we started this, I liked high whites, he liked reds, so we ended up mixing the two, and now we have a whole line of high white reds that are coming out in the next year, probably.
And just know you can do that with anything, whatever your passion is, whether it's Dalmatians, whether it's portholes, whether it's pinstripes. You can do that with anything. You got to come up with a vision, and you have to stick to your guns on it.
Be committed with it.
We have a good friend that got us into the hobby. He's no longer into it at the moment. Austin. And his thing was tigers, and everyone looked in the hobby at tigers like it was just like the run-of-the-mill kind of gecko. It was nothing really flashy about it. That man made me love tigers. We still have a few tigers here and there, but the tigers he produced and the tigers he acquired into his collection was like
phenomenal.
Top tier tigers. I've never seen tigers like that, and he had tigers on top of tigers on top of tigers, producing some of the most phenomenal tigers. So where you would see a very low end tiger, you see his geckos, his tigers that were considered to be a low end morph,
out of the water.
Blew everything out of the water. Everything.
That's,
I mean, it was a big high contender. So I say that because all that means is basically you could take any morph, come up with a vision, and every time you pair or breed those geckos or put them in your groups, you want to make sure you're bettering that morph, bettering that gecko, and just continue on.
Yeah, and that's kind of like Brian at Altitude. He talked about this in one of his other videos where he liked Dalmatians. He was always into Dalmatians, and when Dalmatians weren't cool.
Right.
And now they've come back in, and that's why he honed in on his like confetti project, because that's what he liked. So he stuck true to his guns. He could stay consistent and committed to that. And now he's got one of the most beautiful sets of Dalmatians out there. The ink spots that he has, like Chunky Monkey, is like one of my favorites across the board. I always love that. So, but anyway, yeah. All right. So that was 3 questions down. All right. How many years have we been in the breeding business?
Breeding business? Gosh, how long is it now?
4?
I think we've been breeding for keeping a little longer.
Longer than that. Yeah, 4 years actually breeding full scale. I would say this past year we have really just taken it to the next level with the building of the vault.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like.
But
4
before
years.
we even got going, we were keepers.
Yeah.
We were buying, pretty much acquiring geckos from almost everyone in the hobby. Yeah. Importing geckos. We had probably 80, 90 geckos before we created a business name or did anything in regards to that. We were literally, before we were selling any geckos, we were literally, we joked about it, but it was like every week or every other week we were spending $1,000, $2,000 on geckos, like every week, every other week. Going down. Our FedEx guy still knows us by name, both of us.
Yeah.
I don't know too many people or too many breeders out there that you can sit here and literally call your FedEx guy, like not your delivery guy. I'm talking about the guy who stands behind the desk at FedEx. You can call his personal cell phone and say, "Hey, I know you're closing at 8, but I'm almost there. Can you give me 5 more minutes?" So we literally have direct contact with our FedEx.
We got a good relationship.
So we've been doing this for a while now. A lot of other people have been doing it a lot longer, but we're all in.
Yep.
But right from the very beginning, we've been all in. These guys are very, very exciting for us.
It's been something that's like brought us closer together.
Yeah, it definitely. And keeping and learning. It honestly used to take us twice as long to feed and clean 90 geckos than to do 2,000 geckos. It sounds ridiculous, but it did. So you had to learn what you're doing, whether what you're doing is too much. I can never really say we've ever done anything that was too little.
No.
We've always
been overboard.
Overboard, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, so I would say probably 5, maybe a little bit more than 5 years, but 4 years in the breeding,
the actual business,
the breeding side of the business.
Okay, so going along with the actual business part, we were asked, what are the steps to take, permits, licensing, forms that you need for online sales or just a business in general in the U.S.?
So I know we're gonna miss out on some of the details.
So I can say this. So for us, as far as a business is concerned, when you run a business, no matter what business you run, you're going to do certain things. Like we have a tax ID number. We have, we get our taxes done every year. I file as, this business, and we have an LLC. We are working on trademark and things like that. But that is not required to actually sell. Right. And it also depends on what state you're in. So like we're based out of South Carolina. South Carolina doesn't necessarily have any real permits or licensing or anything to be an actual breeder.
Right.
If you sell at like shows, then we had to apply for a business permit for that purpose. Mm-hmm. We had to show our tax ID number and all that kind of stuff. When we went to shows in Georgia, we had to have a Georgia pet dealer's license.
Right.
But as far as online, it's not like that.
You just have to make sure you're paying your taxes and doing everything you're supposed to. Plus, like ours was set up as a little bit of overkill because with LLC, we have our LLC, but you can also do S corp. LLC is more, like I said, it's overkill for what we do. I would say go after LLC if you have multiple partners involved. You have 3-4 partners in different locations joining together under one umbrella, which is basically LLC. I would go that route if you were doing that. But if it's just like a sole proprietorship, S corp is probably like, more than enough.
Family type thing, S corp.
But then you also have the other side of it where I guess it's licensing, where we have our export license, our import-export license, fish and wildlife license actually with fish and wildlife. So that was a whole nother process in order to bring animals into the country.
And that's fairly expensive.
Yes, it is. So you got to make sure you know the rules and regulations with that, because if you are a single person, it's easier than if you are bringing something into the country under a business. You can bring it into the country and pay whatever fees are associated with that transaction when you're importing as a single individual. But when you're a corporation or a business, it's not like that. And you also got to know, I think it's nationally, where you can't, it's actually illegal. A lot of people do it, but it's illegal to have a friend or someone at another business import something with their order for them
that you've purchased
for you. It's actually illegal. You get a lot of trouble for that. So that's why we want to go above and beyond and make sure we have all bases covered. It's expensive, very, very expensive.
I think the day we were incredibly not prepared for that when we went. Obviously, we live in South Carolina, and our real port for importing, exporting is really in Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
So that Atlanta airport area, we went down there and had to jump through a lot of hoops because you have to have a broker. We were under the assumption that we could either choose to have either a broker or not to basically send paperwork.
Right.
They just are there to send paperwork from U.S. Wildlife and Fisheries to Customs and
inspections.
They're the middle. Yeah, it's like a middleman. And so we were under the assumption that we didn't have to use that if we could do it ourselves. We could go from one agency to another, but that was not the case. We ended up having a lot of things that should have taken 24 to 48 hours happened in a matter of about 4 or 5 hours. Yeah,
we turned the process. Mind you, it was a 2-hour drive one way, so that's 4 hours round trip. We should have been there maybe 30 minutes total. So it would have been 4.5 hours. and we turned that into something like a 14-hour day.
Yes. And I forgot my phone that day.
Yeah, it was like a 14-hour day.
Oh
so
my
we're working off
gosh.
of one phone, and we're literally scanning apps and signing on a phone. We're doing a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
But LLC paperwork, EIN numbers, all that stuff can literally be done on your computer. S corp applications. All the fees are very minimum, but when you start getting into the other licensing fees and import fees, it's sky high.
And we'll just make this distinction. Importing is a lot more difficult than actually exporting, because you, especially if you utilize an exporter, on a regular.
Well, if you utilize an exporter, yes. If you're exporting yourself,
it's still
going
going to be the same. But 90% of the people out there, when they export things, they don't export it themselves typically. They do. You go through others, like we have one that we went through, Geckos, etc.
Geckos, etc.
DDI,
Sam Ford. There's a few different ones.
There's a few different ones that we've utilized.
So for exporting, contact them. Don't contact us.
No.
We don't enjoy the process. We only do it when we absolutely have to. And importing, we'll do whatever we need to get the lines that we're after. We like seeking lines that are not readily available, so we import a lot. We deal with Crimson Cresties.
Yes. Shout out to Donna. She's
from
the OG.
Overseas. Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
We import from Lily Exotics.
Yes, we did.
And even with snakes, we import as well.
Yep.
So, also, if you're not already doing it, subscribe. Click that button, click the bell, comment down below under the video what else you would want us to answer. We're going to try to address everything and be as transparent as possible.
Alright, number 6, we have another question. Is it okay to switch from Pangea to Repashy? And if so, how can I do that safely? Alright, so I actually did a video about how we feed. If you look back in our YouTube videos, there's actually a specific one, how we feed, or an example of one of the weeks where we feed. But Pangea and Repashy, for us, we have always mixed. We feel like as long as you're doing every different variety of Pangea, Repashy, then your geckos don't really get used to any certain things. So you're able to kind of just roll back and forth whatever you have on hand at the time. We also do a variety of supplements in our mixture, which I went over some of those in that video before. So it's not really unsafe to do that. There's no real reason why you should have any problem switching back and forth between those two, or mixing them really.
So I want to piggyback on top of what Audra said as far as with the switching back and forth with food. Unless the food brand you're using, I believe, I don't want to bury a company, but there was a company that had bad batches of food, or the food grade and quality just wasn't good. I'm not going to mention the name of it.
I don't remember the name,
so people didn't use it. They plastered it all over Facebook. I mean, it's not none of the main brands that we're using or anyone is using right now. They even revamped it. I believe Altitude did a video on a new branding of their food, and he said it was pretty decent. So barring anything is wrong with the actual ingredients or how the food is created or put together, I think you can use any of the quality complete gecko diets. Also be mindful. The analogy I want to use for that is the reason we switch food flavors and everything. I think they eat it all. I think they eat it all, whether it's Repashy, whether it's Pangea. I feel that we as humans push our emotions off on our animals too much. And make it hit home for you. It's like if your favorite food is pizza, and you're given pizza today, a whole entire pizza for you to eat by yourself, and you sit down, you eat the whole pizza. It's your favorite thing to eat, and you eat till you're full. And guess what? 2 days later, or for your next meal as a human would be tomorrow or the next morning, you get a whole pizza again. You're like, dang, this is my favorite food, but at this time I'm only going to eat 2 slices. So you don't eat the whole pizza, and then you offer it again, the favorite food again, and then you're like, man, I don't even want this go around, but I know they're going to give it again in a couple days, and you don't even touch it. So basically, you got to understand that it's very simple for a crested gecko. They want to eat, they're going to go and eat if they're hungry. If they eat in this sitting more than they should and they have a full belly, guess what? When you go to feed them again, I don't care if it's their favorite flavor or what it may be, they're not going to eat all of it. They're still full from the previous feeding. And if you're giving dusted bugs or whatever as well, like, they're still full. So don't judge them liking or not liking a specific flavor or brand of food based strictly off of that.
Yeah. Okay. Where do you buy your plants from, and do you make the boxes with the vents? So our plants, you know, we've gotten them from multiple different sources. You can get them from Pangea, you can get them from Amazon, you can get them from all kinds of different things. Now, when this question was posted, it was posted on a video where we showed how we set up a 6-quart enclosure for a crested gecko for a rack system. And I did have a few plants actually in my hands that I was showing, and those all came from Amazon. If you go to that video and you check the link in the description, it'll take you to those exact plants. So that'll help.
Yeah, we like to use pretty much 100% plastic.
Yeah.
It's just easier to clean. We find that they don't mold.
No.
We don't like the nylon.
No, those fabric-y
fake
things.
plants.
Yeah. As far as the boxes with the vents, if you want to grab that one right there. So as far as the boxes with the vents, this is what it looks like. This is just a regular 6-quart Sterilite container. And then the vents just pop out like this. Literally it comes in 2 pieces. There's a little lip on here. I know you can't see that really good, but they literally just pop together like that on either side of your drilled hole. Some people use a heat gun. We use an actual drill bit that is made specifically for the size that these vents are. And these vents, we sell them on our website. They come in 6 for like $12. So yeah, just pop it. We like these a lot because they're super, super, super easy to clean. So they're plastic, they're not metal, they don't warp, they don't rust or anything like that. And they're just easy to pop back on and, you know, put back in. Because a lot of like we started out with our netting for vents. Yeah. And so that the food or poop or whatever, if they poop on that screen, it gets stuck in there and sometimes you can't get it all out and it gets frustrating and disgusting. So we did a lot of research and we finally found what we wanted, those plastic vents. And they are definitely worth every penny, for sure. Okay. What size are the lay bins that we used? Those come
the lay bins, they come from Dollar
Tree.
The
$1.25
tree.
Yeah.
She's mad about that.
It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. That's highway robbery. No.
I'm not showing the size of them, but
they're just like they come in packs of 4. Maybe put grapes or something in. It's like the size of my hand. It's about the size of my hand, and I would say it's about that thick. I don't know the exact size on it, but they come like 3 or 4. Is it 3 or 4?
I think they come, well, it's either 3 or the bonus is a 4.
Maybe so. It's like 3-pack with a bonus of 4 for $1.25 at Dollar Tree. $1.25 Tree. Okay, so last question that we found from our comments and all the other YouTube videos that we had is specifically related to something that we just launched this past month. And it is another social media platform called Patreon. Patreon is a subscription-based platform where you would pay a certain amount a month and then you get exclusive content. And that is for us, that's one thing that we decided to make the jump on. And just 411, if you have, you know, any geckos that you see on our site that you like and you just don't think you have the money to do it, If you can afford that $50 a month, just know you never lose that 50. You get it all back.
Right.
To spend on whatever gecko you see on our website through the calendar year that you started your subscription. So just for that. But the question was posed for us on that particular video where we explained our Patreon. Can a Canadian actually subscribe to your Patreon? Now, as long as you have access to that particular social media platform, you can subscribe as far as we understand. The problem with that is that certain countries, it's hard to send and receive. Obviously, we found that Canada being a little higher priced on their customs and exporting and importing fees, it tends to not be worth it for somebody to purchase something unless it's a high, like a higher transaction, like it's a high-end gecko or something. It's just not worth it to actually pay those customs fees and that shipping. So that being said, for our Patreon, those members will be entered into giveaways and things like that. They will get perks. They get merchandise from us. They'll get different things throughout the year. And the only thing that we will say is for those people in those different countries, specifically this one was Canada, that you just need to understand that you know those fees may be something that you have to pay for that, because it'd just be a little too much for us to kind of come out of pocket with couple $100 to send a t-shirt. That's probably not going to be worth it for you. As far as the actual savings account portion of our Patreon, it would probably definitely be worth it if you are actually looking for an animal. You know, if you save up all year, you've got $600 in your savings account, you find a gecko for $600, and then you just pay your importing fees, and then you've got your gecko for, you know, your at the time that you pay your exporting and importing fees. That's all you're coming out of your pocket with, plus you had gotten all this value throughout the year from our actual Patreon, which is, you know, your ins and outs, your discounts, things like that. And that's it. That's all the questions I kind of came up with. I'm sure there were some questions along the way that we've missed. If you do have questions, like he said earlier in the video, you know, hit that button, subscribe, hit the bell, and put them down in the comments below. You can always follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, obviously our Patreon. We do have TikTok. I believe that's all for right now.
Right. No question is too small.
Yeah.
Don't feel dumb because you're not dumb. Everybody gets started somewhere. Message us if you need to inbox us if you're too scared to actually post your question. But Will and Audra, Flawless Crested Geckos, signing out.